now we are here. I am Seventh. This is my son Eighth, and we are here to review the Xbox Series X. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say right from the beginning that before we even get into the nitty gritty, if you've seen my Xbox One review from 2013, then you pretty much already know what I'm going to say because almost every problem that I had with the Xbox One still exists with the Xbox Series X, short of the power differential. But we'll get started the way we normally do. We're going to take it down tick by tick, and I'll talk, Eighth will talk, we'll figure it all out. Are you ready?
Yep.
All right. So let's start with hardware. I'm going to give you the floor first. Tell me what you think of the hardware.
I don't really see it as any more impressive than the PS5 tech is. I said this in the PS5 review. From an on-paper standpoint, there isn't that much of a power difference between the two of them. What is it, like 12 on the Series X and like 10 on the PS5?
Yeah, it's 10.28 versus 12 point something. It's like almost a 2 teraflop difference to a 2 teraflop difference, basically. It's
Yeah.
not that much different than the power difference between the One X and the Pro.
In the grand scheme of things, 2 teraflops isn't going to make much of a difference. And the fact that they're basically the same architecture, I mean, sure, you can say the PS5 is a hybrid between 1 and 2 or whatever the hell. They're
Oh,
basically
for the
this.
RDNA?
Yeah, they're basically
Yeah.
the same architecture. It's not going to make much of a difference. That being said, I don't see why things are still 4K 30. You know?
Yeah, yeah. What do you
uh,
think what do you think of the way it looks?
I mean, it's a black box. I don't dislike it, and I don't like it. It's just kind of plain,
Hmm, okay.
nondescript monolith.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you on this because you have to really dig and pause things and look close with a microscope side by side, Digital Foundry wise, to really see a visual difference between these two systems running the same game. And for a lot of the stuff, there's next to no difference because if there is some major power difference between the two, third party devs aren't really utilizing it all that much in the time that we've both experienced Series X, because I just like with the PS5, I have my own, you have your own. I'm not seeing this massive advantage of frame rate that everyone
Yeah,
on the
the
Xbox side told me would happen.
yeah, the 30%. The only way I can see that happening at some point is only in third-party games, and that's if they actually use the DirectX 12 Ultimate to its fullest capability. I can see there being some of a gap using that on Series X and it not being on PS5. But, first party games, they're always going to have their own proprietary shit on PS5, so they're always going to run just as well as anything on Xbox will.
I know there's some difference aside from power between the Xbox One and Series X hardware wise because you have instant resume and you have the SSD, so things load faster. But that's really only with, so far that I've experienced it, current gen games and then games that they have patched to take advantage of the faster load times. Otherwise, most of the stuff that I've played that originally came out on Xbox One still looks like it's running on an Xbox One X at best. Some of it
Yeah,
doesn't even look that good. Some of it just looks like OG Xbox One stuff. I would
yeah,
like we were talking about what was it yesterday? I started playing the remake of Gears of War that came out this past generation for
yeah,
Xbox One. It's 4K 30. It doesn't, and even at 4K 30, it doesn't really look all that super sharp. As far, it doesn't look like there's any improvement in the texture quality outside of your general resolution. And again, 30 frames per second. So I'm
Yeah.
not getting that wow factor from the Series X that everybody said that I was supposed to get. It's even worse with 360 and OG Xbox games, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
As far as the looks of the console, let's be honest here, neither of these consoles are all that aesthetically pleasing. You either
No.
have the PS5, which looks like a Transformer's vagina, or you have the Xbox Series X. And of course, I keep mine turned on its side as
Yeah.
opposed to vertical.
Mine
So,
is vertical in the back there.
when it's setting vertical, it looks like a dehumidifier. When it's setting on its side, it looks like a plastic cozy that your grandma would keep Kleenex in. It's just a plain black box. It looks so awkward on the shelf because it doesn't look like it's anything. If it wasn't for the little light up Xbox button, you'd have no idea what it was. It just looks like a plain black box.
Yeah.
So, neither of them really have any visual flair to them. I mean, well, the PS5 does, but it's more of a, what the hell is that flair than it
Yeah.
is, wow, what an amazing looking console.
Basically an eyesore, more or less.
Yeah. User interface.
In comparison to what it was, I am very happy with it. I don't hate it. I like it. Uh,
Really?
yeah. Uh, but it's hard to say if that's because I actually enjoy it or if it's because I know what it used to be and I like it more than that.
Ah, okay.
So,
Well, it was refined slightly prior to the new system coming out. So what you're looking at is what Xbox One looks like now.
yeah.
So it's not a new UI. It's the same UI from Xbox One. It's just a newer UI than what Xbox One looked like when Xbox One first came out.
Yeah.
But that being said, sure, they've cleaned up the front end of it and it's vertical now instead of horizontal like it used to be, where you had to scroll right, scroll right, scroll right. That, now it's scrolling downwards, which makes it a little bit quicker and easier to get through. But all the other stuff behind that is still buried several layers in like it always was. There is no just quick, super fast get to your trophies or achievements. There's no super quick, fast getting to anything. It's all buried, and if you don't know where it is, you're going to be scrolling through all those tabs on the home pop up looking for it. And it's not that way on PS5. On PS5, you know exactly where everything is, and it's just one or two clicks away. So I
Yeah.
still think that PS5's ease of use, definite advantage in this area. I'll give you an example. Recording video game footage.
Mhm.
With PS5, you hook up an external drive, you hit the share button on the controller, you select save the last hour of footage, you're done.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. With this thing, you got to go in to find the menu where the capture stuff is, and it's several layers in. You have to set it to where it's capturing to an external drive instead of capturing to the local, because if you set it to capture to the SSD, it's only going to allow you to save up to 1 minute. 1 minute.
Yeah.
Whereas with PS5, it doesn't care. You can max out your drive with saves if you want. You can max it out with one big massive save. It ain't gonna care. But Xbox, 1 minute on the SSD, so you got to set it to save it to the external drive, and then you can't hit the share button because, as far as I can tell, all the share button on the new Xbox controller does is take screen captures. You can't turn on video capturing with it unless there's some buried setting where you can enable that I haven't found yet.
Yeah.
Uh, and instead of like going in and choosing save that or whatever, like you would if you were saving internally, you got to hit the home button, go up to the main tabs at the top, scroll all the way over, and set it to start recording, and then it starts recording to the external hard drive. So it's several more steps than what it takes on the PS5, and it's a pain in the ass when it doesn't need to be. And that's what the whole UI is to me. A bunch of pain in the ass steps that Sony has already proven doesn't have to be that way.
Another reason that I might think of it more highly than you do is I've been using Xbox and Game Pass on my PC for like the past like year that we've had it,
Yeah.
more or less. It
Yeah.
is so terrible on PC. uh, it is bad, and it's just way easier to use all that shit on the Xbox than it is to use it on the PC. So like that's my main standpoint with this console and why I like it. It's just easier to use the Xbox shit on the Xbox than to use any of it on PC.
So is it safe to say that you don't love the user interface, you just hate it less?
Yeah, I
Okay.
guess that would be the best way to phrase that.
It's not as crap as the
Yeah.
PC version of Game
It's the
Pass, is what
lesser
you're saying.
evil, yeah.
Let's talk controller. Now, you had some experience with the Xbox One controller. You've been using it on PC for a while. And what do you think of it?
It fits my hands better than the old one. It feels a little bit better built. It actually has grips on the underside of the controller so it isn't sliding around in your hands.
Okay.
The D-pad is way louder than it needs to be, I feel, but it works better. And I don't know if this is just because we've had the Xbox One controller for a while and it's kind of giving out, but buttons register on the new controller better than they did on the Xbox One
So
controller.
maybe.
It's more comfortable, the new one, for me.
Well, that's the thing. That was one. Yeah, I was not a fan of the Xbox One controller because I actually liked the 360 controller better. In comparison, here, the best thing that I can say about it, and for some people, this would be a negative, or at least it would have been prior to this new system coming out, and now all of a sudden they don't have a problem with it, but last generation and the generation before that they did. It's smaller. This controller is smaller than the Xbox One controller. It's
Yeah.
slimmer, and even though it feels sturdier, it feels lighter weight. There's not as much heft to it, even with the battery pack put in. It does have a texture on the bottom to give you more grip on the bottom side. But mainly the problems that I had with the previous controller, again, are still here with this one.
Yeah.
And that's that it doesn't have an onboard battery, so you have to either put in double A's or you have to buy an optional charging battery pack. So that's an additional $20 on top of the 60 that you'd pay for the controller. I don't like the new share button because it doesn't have the functionality that the PlayStation share button has.
I haven't
You
even
know,
used it, so
unless it's like buried somewhere as an option you can check. I don't like the fact that you can't hit the share button and choose save the last 60 minutes of footage. That irritates me. And maybe it's because I don't have an external hard drive hooked up to it yet, so it doesn't give me that option. I don't know. But even if it was only internal, I should be able to click the share button and it asks me if I want to save the last minute of footage, at least the last 60 seconds. And it's not even giving me that. All it does is save a screen capture. So I don't know if maybe you're supposed to hold it down longer to get that to happen or if it's just simply not a function there. But either way, it's a pain in the ass. I don't like that
yeah.
at all. And then my biggest complaint about this controller had the same complaint with the Xbox One controller. It's how loud the analog sticks are. They had just like the previous generation, they have this raised lip around each analog stick that is closer to the stick than it is with the PS5 because the PS5 doesn't have that raised edge. And so you push the PS5 sticks all the way to the end, you don't hear that much. But with the Xbox, when you're pushing the sticks, clackety, 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 clackety. It's this
Yeah.
really loud, obnoxious noise.
How clackety the controller is. It's got like a cheap plasticky feel when you hear that shit. I just
Yeah,
wish the controllers were maybe a little bit, I don't know, better thought out in terms of the face buttons and the analog sticks.
I
And
would
I mean,
agree
I've
there.
never been a fan of that layout of controllers, anyways, where it's offset.
Oh, the offset sticks,
Yeah, I've always preferred the PlayStation layout.
parallel.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Me too. Me too. But I think it's funny that the Xbox guys during the previous generation made such a big deal about how Xbox controller is a man's controller. It's big, it's bulky, you can feel it. It's the right size for my man hands. That PS3 and DualShock 4, they just feel tiny. They feel like toys to me. And now the
Yeah.
Series X controller is smaller than the DualSense, and you don't hear a word out of them about it.
Yeah.
Not a word.
The Series X controller is smaller and isn't as sturdy.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
DualSense is a brick.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
a chunky, well built controller.
Let's move on to games library.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the Series X game library?
Uh, well, there's only one current gen game on it that's from them, and that's Medium. But I mean, I guess its library would be Game Pass right now. That would be the main thing we're looking at.
Right.
And I mean, we own most of it on other shit already. The main benefit for me, anyways, would be achievements, because I haven't really gotten many on my Microsoft account,
Right.
and it would be the Microsoft exclusives. So
Hmm.
Forza, Gears of War, shit like that. Bethesda now. It's just easier to play that shit on a console than it is to deal with the Game Pass UI on the Windows Store. Because
Okay.
it is unnecessarily a pain in the ass on PC, and it's just easier to play it on here. So, I mean, it's the same library that I already have on my computer. It's just easier to use it. From a library standpoint, it's honestly kind of weak. There isn't a whole lot that's actually on there that I give a shit about. Gears of War is boring and clunky. The only one I like is Tactics. Uh, Halo is just kind of generic at this point. It's like Halo 3 was the last one I was interested in, and I didn't even finish it. I mean, they have
I
the
mean,
medium, I guess, but that's just Until Dawn with a gimmick.
and they won't have it for too long because it's coming
Yeah,
out for PS5. You know, the system that wasn't supposed to be able to run it because it was so advanced. I couldn't be more disappointed in the library because the library was my stickling point for why I was wanting to go ahead and have one. For that Game Pass library that everyone's been talking about for a solid year. That was the big selling point for me because it was going to allow me to review games that I knew from other reviews were bad without having to shell out 60 to 70 bucks to be able to review it because I'm not popular enough to get review codes. When the Series X arrived, that was the first time I'd logged into Game Pass in probably 6 months.
yeah,
And I was expecting this huge influx of additional titles in there. They
no,
weren't there. It's as small as it was 6 months ago. There's hardly anything of merit that's third party in there. Everything that is third party in there is old stuff from Electronic Arts because it has
EA Play.
electronic it has EA Play built into it. So the main thing that I wanted to be able to use it for, it doesn't do because it's not getting the third party games. You know, even if it's not getting them on launch day, it's not got older stuff in there either, like stuff that's maybe 3 to 6 months old. There's barely any third party stuff in there that's not old stuff that sells for 12 bucks used at
Yeah,
GameStop.
like Devil May Cry isn't in there.
Yeah.
Uh, Resident Evil 8 won't be in there. It'll never make it in there. None of the Resident Evil games are in there, actually. Um, which is kind of surprising to me. Or the two horror games they have in there is Blair Witch and The Medium, and neither one is anything to write home about.
Well, they have the Dead Space stuff, but the Dead Space
I consider
trilogy, but
those more action games at this point.
pretty much, especially with the third one.
Yeah.
But
They don't have any third party like FromSoft shit, which I don't see why they wouldn't be on there, but they aren't. They just don't have anything. They have like nothing from Bandai Namco.
right.
I mean, they have like a couple maybe, but they have nothing pretty much.
Oh, and they have some stuff from Sega. They have Yakuza Like a Dragon.
Yeah, they have the Yakuza shit. They have one Dragon Quest, and then they have the Dragon Quest Minecraft 2. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's really pathetic when it comes to the third party stuff. Like I said, and the Dragon Quest games, they're all a year or two old now,
yeah,
at least.
it's like
And
90%
with
of
the
it.
exception, so like the only two games that it has on there that I've seen that are third party AAA games that have been made in the last year are Dark Alliance and Yakuza Like a Dragon.
Yeah,
So it doesn't have all this massive third party support that all of these Xbox shills on YouTube and Twitter have been telling me that it has. It's just not there. And the thing that upsets me the most, and I would assume upsets you the most, since you said that you were really wanting to use this for upping your achievement score, is that they've bragged about how superior their backwards compatibility is. The OG Xbox games don't have achievements on them. They haven't been patched to have achievements.
yeah,
Still. And I know that Greenberg and others, back when the Xbox One started getting OG Xbox games, they said, well, because the original games didn't have achievements, they're not going to have achievements on Game Pass. But that's part of the whole modernizing backwards compatibility crap that you've been talking about. Y'all have been shitting on Sony's backwards compatibility all this time, and yet they're using the same kind of emulation where you have to download a modernized version of the game. It's not loading it off of a disc you have. And even on your system, yes, you can pop a disc in to prove you get it, and you don't have to pay extra for it like you have to pay on Sony to download PS1 and PS2 games on PS5. But it's still downloading it. It's not reading it off the disc. And yet, when you download a PS2 game or a PS1 game on PS5, trophies. Trophies
yeah,
and a platinum. Why is that not there on OG Xbox games? And then the biggest thing, they've been talking and talking and talking about FPS boost, FPS boost, backwards
there's only a
compatibility
handful of shit that
performance.
uses it.
Most of the games that I have for 360 and for Xbox One are running at the same speed that they were running on their original systems, 30 frames per second. And that's shocking to me
Yeah,
because they have made, and their fan base have made, such a big deal about how these games would run so much better on Xbox Series X, and they don't. They're still 30 frames per second. You've got this small little handful list of games that have been boosted from 30 to 60, and that's it. And it might be somewhat bigger than PS5's list, but it's still a tiny ass list.
yeah, they have a website, and the list is like 2 pages long, and each page is maybe like, I don't know, 60, 70 titles long. So, like, at most, they have like maybe 150 to 200 games that have FPS boost. But it's like 90% of it is shit we don't give a shit about.
I just don't get it. I just don't get it. Where is this big advantage in so many different things that the media and the Xbox fan base and Microsoft themselves have told me would be there, and it's not there. This is another reason why I say this feels like the Xbox One X all over again. Because what did you hear when the Xbox One X came out? All you heard from the fans and the media was 4K 60, 4K 60, 4K 60. And you and I both know the One
Yeah.
X didn't have hardly anything that ran 4K 60. And
Yeah.
so here we are again. Oh, most powerful console ever made for 30 frames per second. The medium. The medium. They're one current gen, soon to be not, exclusive 4K 30. It's not running
Yeah.
60 frames per second.
And don't tell us it's because of that dual reality engine bullshit, because that's not how it works. It's not rendering two entirely different games at once. It's cutting the resolution in half and rendering two different scenes at once.
Which is
It's a
basically
it's the
it's
same
the same
performance
amount.
impact as just a single full res screen.
Right. They're just taking the full screen, cutting it in half, and splitting the resolution and processing power between those two halves. You put them back together, it's the same amount of processing power as just running a regular game that's all on one screen.
Yeah.
So there's there's nothing revolutionary about the power that it takes to run that game, as evidenced by the fact that they're porting it to PS5.
Yeah.
But even so, it doesn't even look as good as older last gen games.
From my standpoint, this is below PlayStation right now. Because honestly, the backwards compatibility is the same on both. Sure, you can play older gen stuff, but it's not any better than just playing it on the original consoles.
And plus, it's also available on PS5. It's just that you're not getting it for free by popping your disc in the system. You're having to
Yeah,
pay $10 to get it.
yeah. But the backwards compatibility is the same, but the first party library is better on PlayStation right now. So, 2, 3 years down the line, they might turn that around. They might have a bunch of great stuff. I don't know. I can't say right now. But right now, PlayStation is ahead of the game. So the library kind of stinks.
Here Until Dawn came out in what, 2016, 2015, somewhere around in there. It's an
It
old
was somewhere around there.
right. It looks better. The resolution isn't as high,
No.
but it has that motion captured facial animation that gives a level of realism to the faces. And you can look at the medium and tell that ain't mocap. That's hand animated mouth movement.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint alone, it doesn't look as good as a game that was on OG PS4 years ago.
It looks like a high budget indie game.
It's not this revolutionary thing that everyone made it out to be, and that's just an example of the media and especially the Xbox fanboy uh, shill base out there on YouTube and Twitter hyping anything that they don't think is going to end up on PlayStation up to the moon. And then the minute it comes out and they realize it's nothing like what they've been telling everybody it would be, they just shut up about it and pretend that it never existed. When was the last time you saw an Xbox fanboy even talk about the medium? They constantly go from one thing to the next. They talk about the power, and then the system's not really looking all that visually better than PS5. Then they talk about the backwards compatibility, and then you find out that the OG games don't have achievements, but when you get them on PS5, they do, and just on and on. Every time they hype something up and it doesn't live up to that hype that they establish, they just pretend like they never said any of it, and they move on to the next thing that they're going to exaggerate.
The difference in hardware is not big. The difference in backwards compatibility is not big. The controller is worse, and the first party is worse. And that's where it stands right now.
So what would you give it as a score out of 8?
Like
Not potential, but as it stands right today.
yeah, as today, it's like 4.5 to a 5. It's
Okay.
around there. It's a bit
Those
lower
are
than the PS5,
okay.
mainly because of the first party titles.
Well, as I stand right now, 3 out of 7.
Mm.
And if they at least, there's some things it's too late to fix at this point, but if they at least start adding trophies or achievement support to the OG Xbox games, and all these studios they've bought actually do end up flooding Game Pass with nonstop new stuff for me to play, that could possibly get it up to a 5, between a 5 and a 6, like tied with PS5.
Yeah.
I just have a bad feeling about all these studios that they've bought. How long did they have Rare down in the basement making Kinect games and avatars for the 360 UI and stupid crap like that? And but that's not the only example. I mean, look at Fable. Fable fell along the wayside when that used to be not so much sales wise, but it used to be a big deal for them because that was their first party RPG. And sure, some of that was due to Peter Molyneux. Some of it was
Yeah.
because most games that are made by Peter Molyneux, a lot of their problems come from Peter Molyneux. It's just been a mess whenever they bring a third party in and make it into a first party. It's like 50-50 whether it's going to be resulting in something good. And with Phil Spencer just in the last year talking up games as a service, games as a service, games as a service, I'm concerned about what Fable is going to end up being. I'm concerned about what some of these games that the third party studios they've bought is going to end up being.
Yeah.
You know, what is the next uh Elder Scrolls going to be? Is it going to be more like Skyrim, or is it going to be more like Elder Scrolls Online? What's the next Fallout going to be? Or is Fallout even going to exist anymore outside of Fallout 76 and they're just going to go with Starfield from here on out?
I think we'll have an idea with Bethesda at least when Starfield comes out. I think that'll kind of give us an idea of what direction they're heading in there. I'm hopeful for a Halo Infinite, but I think since Bungie cut ties, I think it's kind of been dead since that happened.
Let's be honest, Bethesda hasn't exactly been great in a long time. Skyrim was the last great game that they made, and Skyrim was full of bugs.
Yeah, Skyrim wasn't necessarily amazing from a technical standpoint.
No, it was mainly the story and the music was what made Skyrim as great as it was. The story, the acting, and the music.
Yeah, that
Because
was
it's
about
not so
it.
much the gameplay, and it certainly isn't the
No.
performance. Because the performance was all over the place, no matter how many times they've re-released it and still haven't fixed it. With
Yeah.
all the different versions of Skyrim that's come out, still not fixed. But hey, they were an epic buy for Microsoft. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not as long as they're still using that same old ass
The
engine that they've been
the
using.
creation engine, yeah.
Well, anyway, we went kind of off topic there.
Yeah.
So I say 3, and you said
4.5 out of 8.
4.5. So there you have it, folks. Neither of us overly super impressed with the Xbox Series X. Not even going to bother with the Series S, cause come on,
Yeah.
come on,
It's just a weaker version of the same console.
right? So that's where we're going to leave it tonight, and we'll be back with further game reviews, and we'll do some more of this tag team stuff with games. We've got some games that we're going to do tag team reviews of in the future. And if you liked this, give it a thumbs up, give it a like, uh, leave a comment, subscribe by all means, and we'll see you next time. This is 7th.
8th.
We'll see y'all later.